Good morning, man.
Good
I
morning.
appreciate it, Dan. Thank you for coming in,
Yes, sir.
talking to me today. For those of you who don't know, this is Mr. Dan Shaw. Dan Shaw is, I consider him the insurance guru of Gainesville. He is our resource as the Curlings Group for all things insurance, as well as myself in real estate. So, I mean, how are you doing this morning? You doing good? I mean,
Doing great. Thank
yeah.
you for having me.
No,
I'm
I'm
excited.
I'm glad to have you here. You've been at the top of my list of guests I wanted to have on.
Thank you.
Your knowledge is quite as expansive, and I figured being able to share the knowledge that you have, especially with the amount of questions we receive with insurance being the focal point, I'd love to clarify some things for the folks here. So,
Sure.
so many potential home buyers in Florida are concerned about the increasing frequency of natural disasters like hurricanes and floods. From your perspective, how has the insurance industry adapted to these changing climate patterns? And what advice can you offer to homeowners who are looking for the right coverage to protect their home should one of these natural disasters occur? Obviously, being in Gainesville, we're a little more inland, but we still have some weather patterns of our own here. So, what do you recommend?
Well, hurricanes happen. It's important when you're shopping for insurance that you are going with a company that one has a lot of financial backing. Reinsurance is very important. And what that is insuring insurance companies. Really, find an insurance agent you trust. That's what it comes down to. Find an insurance company you can do some research on. End of the day, hurricanes are going to happen. It's Florida.
Right.
If an insurance company is in Florida, they're ready for the hurricanes.
This last hurricane season, we've been pretty fortunate this year, right? Things are looking good insurance wise. I've heard a lot of companies have made out fairly well this year. Does that seem to be the common sentiment, or?
Yeah, I mean, we've had the one pretty decent sized
Right.
hurricane. We definitely got lucky on how that hit land. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen again here.
Fair enough.
When any year there's one hurricane, we're doing great.
Okay.
Hopefully another one doesn't happen.
Right.
You never know.
No, that's true. Yeah, very insightful. I mean, so I grew up in South Florida. We've had 3 hurricanes in a row. I remember going 4 weeks without power when I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I still have those memories very vivid in the front of my mind of boiling water on the front of a vehicle, and it was rough, man. It was rough. A lot of people lost a lot of things, and so being in Florida, we kind of adapt and we get used to those hurricanes. And I think we take it for granted the large scale economic impact that these storms have on us year in and year out.
Yep. That's where, like I said, reinsurance, that's where that comes in, and that's important. You definitely want an insurance company that has a massive reinsurance policy.
Okay.
Reason is if they exhaust all of their financial assets to pay off all these claims, they need someone backing them up.
And we can assume if we're going with any reputable company that they have stuff like
Yes,
that.
they have to have reinsurance.
Okay.
The amount of reinsurance is the question.
Okay, absolutely. Florida's homeowners insurance market has experienced significant challenge, to say the least, in recent years, as the news has made very aware. This is a huge stressor to a lot of potential home buyers. I know you and I have talked off camera about raising premiums, coverage options being maybe limited for folks in certain areas. They're worried about that when they're going into the home buying process. Can you shed some light on the current landscape and then share some insight on how home buyers can not navigate this kind of complex environment that seems to be changing by the month, by the day? There's never any straightforward answer, it seems like.
End of the day, every question you're going to ask me, end of the day, it's going to come down to finding an insurance agent you trust. The reason is every insurance company operates differently. Right?
Okay.
For example, a company just opened up where they were insuring 6 years or newer homes. Well, now they're insuring 2002 and newer homes. Things are getting better. It's going to take a long time for things like rates to decrease and all of that. Insurance companies have to recoup money, and there's just been a massive amount of loss. That said, I see brighter futures ahead of us. When that happens, who knows? What company to go with and things like that. I mean, like I said, it comes down to the insurance agent. What do they have available to them to write? You might not have options. Right now in Florida, it is tough. Sometimes Citizens insurance is the only option. And if that's the case, got to have a discussion.
Right. And you and I have had this conversation off camera, but if Citizens is the only option for a homeowner in a potential buying process when they're about to go under contract, maybe they just went under contract, they're still in the inspection period, we got to be careful here with what we say. But, is there a conversation to be had as to whether another home may be considered if Citizens is the only option? Now, obviously, the state is making some changes currently with Citizens, and hopefully that'll alleviate some of the stressors we've had in the past. But,
choosing my words carefully.
Right, absolutely.
Citizens has its faults for sure. However, Citizens has some great things too. They offer full water coverage. Where if you have a house, older than 1970 something, depending on the company, you might not be able to get water coverage, or at best limited water coverage. So that's one thing Citizens is actually pretty decent at. Their
Okay.
claims handling, great. I've had a good experience with them, especially through this last hurricane. That said, it is the it's the last resort,
Right.
right? We're not striving to put anyone in the Citizens. They're going through what's called a depopulation now, where a company will come in and pull a handful of policies out. These clients don't have a choice; they have to go.
Right.
Sometimes, it might be a conversation. It really depends on the house.
Okay.
A very old house, they don't have an option. A newer build, anyone trying to put them in Citizens with a brand new build, they're doing them a disservice.
Okay. Absolutely. And that's great to know because obviously we have both ends of the spectrum quite frankly here in Gainesville, from our historic areas downtown to our new builds out in the Jonesville, Newberry area. We get quite a vast difference of clients who are looking for homes. So very insightful. Thank you. One of the biggest concerns for home buyers in Florida is the potential for post-purchase prices. One of those is being hidden flood risks or unexpected insurance costs that may arise later on. What steps can we, that's being myself as a real estate agent, and then my buyers as well, take during our due diligence period, that being our inspection period, to better understand the insurance implications of their chosen property. Now, of course, we can find we can look at all the flood maps. We can talk to all the agents and whatnot. Those unexpected things, they're unexpected for a reason, right? So it's hard that we can pinpoint them. But what are some things that you see that are unexpected that arise day to day in the insurance world?
Well, the good news is we have something called a flood zone determination, right? We go into the National Flood Program, do our, put our information in, and it'll tell us what flood zone the house is in. It's not the land, where the house is pinpointed on the map. That helps a lot. So if you're right next to a flood zone, the chances you could end up in that flood zone at some point. Landscape changes. You're in flood zone X. That means you're not in a flood zone. The likelihood of it being flooded is way less than if you're in something like an AE, a flood zone. That's high chance of flood. So you're great at this. You come to me early on in the process, which everyone should really start early on. We search, see where it is, see where it lies. That tells us right there. Should we get flood insurance? Should we talk about flood insurance? We can cost that out. It's a very easy process. Flood insurance sometimes just isn't affordable. So it definitely depends on the house. But if you start the process early, there's not going to be any issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like Dan said, one thing that I as a real estate agent and one thing that Dan as an insurance, all we can do is work as fast as you come to us. And if you don't give us the knowledge in a timely manner, it's hard for us to act proactively. So I know that I'm going to feed Dan that information as fast as possible so Dan can do what he can as fast as possible, working with our home buyers to make sure that everything is successful, because ultimately we want the closing to go well and close on time. And if we don't have that insurance in place, there's a good chance that the mortgage is not gonna close. And that's ultimately not going to be a good scenario for our home buyers. It's not going to be a good scenario for you, the lender, nobody involved. So we want to avoid that altogether. And being proactive is obviously the best way to do that. And we insist on that every single day. So should people buy flood insurance even if they're not in a high risk zone? We know zones change and unexpected things happen. Now I remember a few years ago, Tropical Storm Debbie came through. I say a few years ago, maybe a decade or so ago. And it was a tropical storm, but it decided to sit on north central Florida for 3-4 days, just dumping large amounts of water. And a lot of places that typically don't get flooded got flooded at that point in time. Is it worth having that conversation with somebody who's not in the flood zone to potentially buy the flood insurance as well?
You got to remember we're in Florida. All right, the land is we're not high above sea level. Right. You never know when something like that's going to happen. It's important to know what a flood really is. And a flood is rising water from the outside of your house coming into your house. So during a storm, your roof blows off and it rains in your house. That's not a flood. If the sewer drain in front of your house backs up and all that water comes into your house, that's a flood. It's important to know the differences. Knowing where your house lies next to your neighbors maybe can help you make that decision if you're slightly higher than everybody else. It's always a discussion. Some people want it when they probably have a 0% chance of flood. Right. It's going to come down to cost at that point.
Do you see that being a common thing that people ask you about, or
it's here and there? A lot of native Floridians don't really ask.
no. kind of susceptible to all the hurricanes at this point in time.
A lot of people moving to our state, they always ask.
Understood.
And whether they go with it, though.
No, and that is something that I see as well. Is people from moving out of state are often the most they've heard the most negative tones about the Florida insurance market currently. And I think it's good that we put a positive tone out there to let people know that they can get insurance. How many folks have you had that have not been able to get insurance, to date, in the state of Florida?
Well, there's been a few.
Yeah.
Really, when you're getting insurance, this once again, this is for an older home. So any
Right,
house
right, right.
over 20 years old, you have to get certain inspections. And the problem is you have to pass these inspections.
Right.
So a lot of these houses people are going into and buying, well, maybe the water heater is 50 years old because they don't make them like they
Right.
used to, or the roof is just out of age, or there's a shingle missing, or something along the lines of that. I can't get insurance on that house anymore.
Right.
Everything on this, it's called a 4-point inspection. It checks your roof, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. All those have to be good working order with no hazards. Without that, they're kind of dead in the water.
Now, without going too far, because I know different companies have different requirements, but what are some of the most common requirements you see on those 4 points? I know that this wasn't, age wise and things of that nature. Where do you
Yeah.
normally see those standing right now, average?
Yeah. So, like you said, every company's different. Roof. If your roof's over 15 years old, it's tough. You're probably going to end up in Citizens, really. Water heater, same thing. 15 years is that kind of happy point with insurance companies, and this is just a generalization. It's not any specific company. HVAC seems to be the most relaxed as long as it's in working order. I really haven't had a lot of pushback. Not to say that won't happen, but as long as it's in working order, there's no fire hazard presence, anything like that. Now, electrical boxes, there's certain ones that once they see the name, it's a no-go. There are known fire hazards. Then you have the type of amperage or the amount of amperage they have. If it's under 100, probably not going to be able to get you insurance. Double tap breakers are extremely common to see. We got to get those fixed, but that at least is a cheap fix.
Right.
You know.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. Now that shifting from that, one of the other things, obviously, we want the inspections to be good. We have that inspection period when you go under contract. We're going to determine all of that. A lot of times we might have the opportunity to fix some of those before the contract closes, so that way you can get insurance. But we're going to shift over. Another way that homeowners sometimes have an opportunity to save money is through WinMit. Let's touch on that a little bit, and briefly explain. Most people are foreign to that concept of what wind mitigation is, or they think that everybody needs it, or it's a coverall. It's not a coverall. It's for specific situations, and explain what those are to the
Sure.
folks.
So wind mitigation is checking how your roof is attached to the structure of your house. So it's really when you go further south, they're checking for other things as well. But around this general area, they're looking at what's the shape of your roof? Is it a gable roof, a hip roof? They're looking at how are the trusses attached to the structure of the house? So is it straps? Is it clips? Is it toenails? Keep in mind, clips and straps are the big discount. Toenails are not a discount. And then what kind of nails do they use for the plywood attaching to the trusses? Are they the 60 nails, which are shorter, or are they 80 nails, which are a little longer? 80 nails are the discount. So all these things, the 80 nails and the clips or straps, came code in 2002. Anything after 2002, so 2002 or newer, you automatically get these discounts.
Okay.
So when you have a house that's 2002 and older, you want to look at getting a wind mitigation. Now, the further you get away from 2002, the less likely you are to have these things. That said, I've had a house that was built in 1970 get wind mitigation discounts. I've had a house in 1999 get wind mitigation discounts. It's kind of a game at that point, right? I think if your house is 1980 to 2002, it's worth the $100, $150, whatever your inspector charges you,
Right,
to get it.
Okay, absolutely. With that being said, if you don't have any kind of wind coverage at all, what does the typical homeowner's policy include for, wind damage? We're away from the coast, right? So wind damage may not be quite as big of a concern here, but obviously our channel goes out to all of North Central Florida, Jacksonville, Daytona, St. Augustine, all the way down to Tampa, right? So a lot of these folks on the coast, they want to know about how can they be covered? Shall their home get damaged from a windstorm, which could happen any given afternoon?
Yep. So specifically primary homes, you're writing a policy called an HO3. That has wind coverage, right? You're going to have two separate deductibles always. Okay. You're going to have your all covered perils deductible, which is on an HO3, any peril that's covered that's not specifically excluded. You're also going to have a deductible for hurricane coverage. That's any named storm, hurricane, tropical storms, things like that. That deductible is typically higher. I recommend to everybody in Florida to have hurricane coverage. I mean, you need it.
Right.
I mean, we had a hurricane this year. We've had a hurricane last year. It's going to happen. We're Florida.
Right.
The amount of claims, it depends on the size of the storm, but it's important to have.
I mean, this storm hit an area of Florida hasn't been hitting, 30, 40,
Forever.
50 years. Yeah, a long
Lots
time.
of damage, too.
Widespread. I was able to visit Ground Zero there in the week after the storm, and there was a lot of destruction, and a lot of homes got massively destroyed. So the economic impacts, luckily that's a more rural area. I shouldn't say, for the folks out there, it's very unfortunate, but luckily that it didn't hit a huge metropolitan area where it wiped out millions, and we were able to have less widespread damage in those rural areas. But you kind of just touched on it everywhere. I was going to ask you that we're 1 hour, from Cedar Key, and Cedar Key just got ravaged. Should we have that? And you obviously just answered that question everywhere.
That storm shifted north. We got lucky, right? If it didn't, we'd be having a very different conversation right now.
Right.
The amount of money we would have paid out. When I say we, I mean insurance industry as a whole, would have been astronomical. It's unfortunate where it hit for those people, but as far as insurance companies go, it really was beneficial because it would have caused some serious financial struggles, I think, for a lot more people.
I agree. You've been very informative as always. Do you have any final things that you want to tell the folks? Things that, we obviously get a lot of questions day in and day out. Maybe some things that you want to make sure get told on record to the folks, or any other.
It comes down to what I said first, right? You got to find an insurance agent you trust. You can ask questions to. They're going to give you the honest answer. 9 out of 10 of them are great people. I know a lot of insurance agents in town, and all of them are honest. It's a tough market, and they're going to be honest with you and tell you it's a tough market.
Yeah.
That said, hopefully it gets better.
Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself a shameless plug. Tell them where they can find you at. Any insurance information. Give Dan a call. Dan, how can they reach you?
Dan Shaw. My email address is dan.shaw@ffbic.com. You can reach me on my phone at 352-378-1389, extension 4.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I appreciate it. Don't forget, follow the channel, Colton Sells Florida. Give me a call, Colton Brewer, anywhere in North Central Florida. We can handle all your real estate needs. 386-697-7647. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. Have a great day.